A frame-by-frame analysis of multiple videos obtained by ABC News shows Ross fires the first shot at 9:37:13 a.m. About 0.4 of a second later, the second shot strikes good. Then a third shot just 0.3 of a second after that. Officials say last June, Agent Ross was dragged 100 yards during another immigration vehicle stop and needed 33 stitches. DHS says this is video from that incident.
The Trump administration maintains the agent opened fire to avoid being run over, but the direction of the tires appears to be facing away from the officer to the right. There's still a dispute as to whether the officer was grazed or struck by the Honda. From this other video angle, we can see that the officer has already crossed in front of the car. He's holding a cell phone.
They are trying to essentially take some sort of recording or photograph of the driver to show or identify her as a antagonist to their enforcement operations. What he does is cross in front of and stay in front of a occupied running vehicle. You should not be intentionally putting yourself in front of a vehicle unless absolutely necessary. And with a cell phone in his left hand, he draws his pistol with his right hand and in a very quick succession rattles off 3 rounds.
Back off, guys. Let him work. Back off.
The one you're arresting is the true American hero.
Off the street. Back it up. Off the street.
But I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis.
And, you know, this notion of inflammatory comments, I mean, come on, guys. You know, I dropped an F-bomb. They killed somebody. Which one of those is more inflammatory? I'm going with the killing somebody.
To all units, proceed to your post assignments. All units, proceed to your post assignments.
That's the sound of the police. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the beast.
Yeah, baby. It's episode 14 of Probable Cause on January 13th, 2026. Jeff Norman and former FBI agent Greg Dillon with you as usual. And tonight our very special guest is Andrew Branca. Is it Branca or Branca?
Either one is fine. Don't worry about it.
All right. Well, Branca, I think we'll go with. And Andrew has a very popular YouTube show. Also, he's very active on X, where he has lots and lots of followers. He is the author of The Law of Self-Defense. So right away, I have to apologize to you, Andrew, for asking you to speak about something that's way out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
The shooting in Minneapolis. Whoa, boy. What an uproar. I'm active on both Facebook and X, and usually there's a lot more action on X. Facebook is more for, exchanging broccoli recipes and so forth. But people are really riled up on Facebook about this as well as X. A lot of fake internet lawyers spreading around all kinds of incorrect information combined with arrogance. Arrogance and ignorance combined is ugly.
Yeah. Real internet lawyers, too. And they don't know what they're talking about either.
Yeah. We should get to that. We absolutely should get to that. Why don't we start with, whatever myths pop into your mind that have caught your attention that are just plain wrong?
Well, I mean, we have to keep in mind what's happening here is there's always misinformation and misconceptions about use of force law. It's how's the cliche go? It's not that people don't know use of force law. It's just that what they know is wrong. I mean, they just don't know how the law actually works. And that includes most lawyers, by the way. That includes most law enforcement officers. We're just not taught that stuff very well. What law enforcement officers are taught, and they're taught a lot more than lawyers are taught, is mostly intended to protect their department from civil litigation, not intended to protect the officer from criminal liability. And the truth is, this is not a complicated legal analysis here. This is very straightforward. It gets complicated because people want it to be complicated. They want to push propaganda. They want to push their particular narratives. Everyone's in a separate tribe now, the way America is run. And that makes people very comfortable saying things they even know are outright lies, much less just engage in misinformation. But the only legal question here that gives you the legal answer as to whether or not this shooting is justified is, did the officer who fired the shot have a reasonable perception that he was facing an imminent threat of unlawful deadly force harm? If the answer to that is yes, he gets to shoot her in the face, and it's simply not a crime. And it doesn't just have to be defense of himself. It could be defense of the other officers right next to him. It can be defense of people down the street who were still subject to injury by this woman, this driver, Renee Good, wielding her automobile as a deadly weapon.
Right. There's the unanimous decision in Plumhoff versus Rickard, which I guess is probably the best Supreme Court case to cite. It's fairly recent, too. So it's not just about the officer. It's about people in the vicinity. Now, you say it's simple. I think what you're referring to is the basis upon which it's to be decided. It's easy to understand what that is. But would you admit it's a little bit more complicated potentially, or at least, let's say, debatable as to, well, was it reasonable?
Well, people have to understand what reasonable means. And I want to mention, too, that Supreme Court decision you put up, that's perfect. It's appropriate to put it up. But that Supreme Court decision did not find new law. That's long established principle. They're just repeating what's always been the case. People have to understand what's reasonable. Reasonableness doesn't mean the optimal answer. It doesn't mean the answer you would have chosen. It doesn't mean that there weren't better answers available. You're not required to make perfect decisions in self-defense. You're only required to make reasonable decisions in self-defense. And reasonable means that you were applying your powers of reason to the facts presented to you. It could have been a suboptimal choice. It could have been better options available. That doesn't make it unlawful as long as it was a reasoned decision. It wasn't speculative. It wasn't made out of bare fear or panic. That's all that's required. And in that context, this officer had a 2,000-pound car used against him as a weapon. Any reasonable person would believe, I'm now reasonably subject to being killed or maimed as a result of that weapon being used against me. That's a deadly force threat. The deadly force threat was unlawful. It was reasonably perceived. It was imminent. It was actually occurring. Those are all the conditions you need for a lawful use of deadly defensive force.
Are you familiar with Janine Younes?
I don't know. I don't.
Civil liberties attorney, big on First Amendment issues. She won it. Well, I don't know if she actually won. She argued a case in the Supreme Court not too long ago. Anyway, she was on The Daily Show last night with Jon Stewart, and she was sort of hinting that this is just some sort of a traffic stop. Let's take a look at what she said.
So in this circumstance, but if she's obstructing them, does that then give them the right? Because my understanding is they do have a right to arrest people if they are obstructing them.
I expect if this case goes to trial, that will be a litigated issue because the obstruction has to be pretty serious and it has to be of their enforcing the immigration law. So just blocking traffic, I would think probably wouldn't rise to that level. But I'm sure, again, if it goes to trial, that will be an issue that comes up.
Yeah, I don't know where she got that from, but what do you have to say about that?
Well, there's a lot of misinformation there. There's lots of reasons they can make an arrest. First of all, she's just obstructing traffic on the road. That's a crime. You're not allowed to do that. Any police officer could make the arrest. And there's a misconception out there that.
Well, hold on. I hate to be argumentative with you, but with all respect, it may be the wrong statute, but what I found says that ICE is authorized only to enforce federal crimes. Is that not the right statute, or am I misinterpreting it?
Well, she's impeding them. There's a federal statute against impeding federal law enforcement officers, so that's a federal crime.
Or interfering, yep.
Right.
So she's committing a federal offense.
But am I interpreting correctly that it must be a federal offense? So let's say, I want to make a distinction here. I'm not, trying to be argumentative, but let's say they were just, driving somewhere and they saw a car where there was an expired meter. That would be something that they, as I read this, they don't have authority to do. But in this case, they do have the authority because she was obstructing them, right?
Well, I don't know that anybody would have a power of arrest for an expired meter. But you have to keep in mind, almost every state has a provision that allows for an arrest to be made by a private citizen. That's called citizen's arrest.
Yeah,
so this notion that federal officers have less of an authority to make an arrest than I would if that was me in that circumstance is obviously nonsense. And no, federal law enforcement officers have broad powers to make arrests for federal crimes committed in their presence, which is what is happening here.
Yeah. My question going back to that woman, when she talks about a trial, I mean, is she lumping this into a civil lawsuit or only a criminal prosecution? Because when you say trial, it can be either.
Well, at this point, the only possibility would be if there's a lawsuit filed against the cop, right? Because, well, no, I guess theoretically Minnesota could charge him. I mean, the feds aren't going to charge him. What about that, Andrew?
Well, I don't see grounds for any civil lawsuit against the officer. He'll be removed from a civil suit under qualified immunity. So all these big Supreme Court cases on use of force by police, Tennessee versus Garner, that whole collection of cases, those are all civil cases, every single one of them. They were not criminal prosecutions. They were lawsuits against the department. And by the time I got to the Supreme Court, the officer who'd actually used the force had long since been dismissed from the case under qualified immunity. So he has protection from civil suit, not for criminal conduct. So in theory, the state of Minnesota could charge him, indict him, try to prosecute him for an unlawful killing if they think they can make that argument. But if that happens, the Trump administration and DOJ would just file in federal court, get it immediately dismissed under the supremacy clause.
Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Even after it's explained, they just keep arguing. Impeding traffic is not a federal crime. But tell them, Andrew, that's not what the crime would be.
Right. Impeding a federal law enforcement officer in the course of his duties is a federal crime.
Is that the correct statute there, sir?
Yes. Yep, that's it, 111.
Right.
And under 1357, any federal law enforcement officer can make an arrest for any offense against the United States committed in his presence. It's a very generalized arrest power.
Right. And I thought of that citizen's arrest analogy myself also, Andrew. But nonetheless, it seems like that statute you just cited actually makes it more restrictive, right? It doesn't say any offense. It says any federal offense. So how could that be? That's what it says, right?
I guess I don't understand your reasoning. That a particular statute allows an arrest under one particular set of circumstances does not mean that there aren't other justifications for the officer to make an arrest. This officer could also make an arrest as just a civilian, under his civilian authority to make a civilian arrest. One does not preclude the other. You could have 10 different statutes that give you 10 different justifications to make arrests. They're all valid arrests.
Got it. So, but I just think I totally believe you. I'm just trying to understand it. I think it's weird that they would have to rely on the citizen arrest statute.
Well, they won't. This covers it. Again.
Yeah.
That was just a law school exam type of example. But 1357 covers him. A felony offense impeding federal law enforcement officers in the course of their duties was committed in his presence. He has authority to make an arrest under those circumstances.
Right. So we can take a look at the video so that everybody is clear what.
By the way, I should mention too, even if he didn't, let's pretend that the arrest was completely lawless. And if it had been secured and she had been cuffed and booked, she would have been immediately released and she would have had grounds to sue them for wrongful arrest. Let's pretend that's all true. She's still not allowed to try to kill him with her car. He's still allowed to defend himself from a lethal force attack. So this whole arrest line of argument has nothing to do with the justification for the use of force. If an officer is unlawfully arresting you, that gets settled later in court. It doesn't get settled on the side of the road with you trying to kill the officer.
Andrew, isn't it a fact that you have no legal right to resist an arrest even if it is unlawful?
Yes, I would say that's an accurate statement. Now, it gets a little more ambiguous if the officer is making that arrest using deadly force, and the use of deadly force is clearly unlawful.
No, I understand that.
You can have a right. So say you're jaywalking, and the officer starts shooting at you to secure your arrest. That would clearly be an excessive use of force by the officer. You could defend yourself against that unlawful excessive use of force. But we're not talking about that here.
By the way, Andrew, just so you know, I mentioned that Greg's a former FBI agent. He's also a former police officer.
Great.
So
well, if I say anything that's inconsistent with your experience, feel free to pipe up. I never take.
No, I mean, I feel good that everything that you say lines up with my understanding from previous training. So, that's fine.
I've taught at the FBI Academy,
and you should, because that's your wheelhouse.
All right, so let's look at why the officers approached the car to begin with, and why they were going to detain and maybe arrest her. I don't know if we want to, let me lower the volume here. So I'll lower the volume so we can talk over it. So I believe that's actually Ms. Good leaning on her horn. And this is a video that goes on for 3.5 minutes. For all we know, she was acting like this for longer than that, but there's at least this much time. So she's there because the ICE officers are there. I mean, the wife has admitted it. They're there to protest. And see all these officers there. When Ms. Good took off in her car, I'm not a mind reader, but it seems logical to me to assume that the ICE agent was thinking about them. It wasn't just about hitting him. She was driving in a reckless manner. But anyway, this is you want to jump in there, Andrew, and I'll just let this play until it gets to the point where they approach the car.
Well, my understanding is she's been doing this for quite some time. It's been an ongoing process of impediment and obstruction. And finally, the officers just had enough, and they decided she's chosen to make a bad decision today. We're going to subject to her. We're not going to continue to do this for another 5 hours. We're going to make an arrest, take her off the playing field, and then go about our business.
Yeah. See, what her defenders or apologists are saying is, well, the cars could get by. But that's not like as if there's no danger at all when you're parking your car sideways in the street and they have to squeeze by and you're blowing whistles in their face. And
if any of those people saying that were on their way to the supermarket to do their shopping and this woman was obstructing them in the way that she's obstructing these officers, they would say they were being impeded from getting to the supermarket.
Yeah. They were impeded. I mean, so just because you can get by. Same thing with we'll get to the officer standing in front of the car in a moment. But I think we're just about up to the point. Well, it's still not yet.
Jeff, if my recollection is correct on this, when a vehicle that was not ICE came up the road, she waved them past, and then she would reposition her car to block the road again.
Well, I've seen the apologists talking about how cars got by. I'm not sure exactly, but
right. But she was letting them get by, but then she would block the road again to make sure that ICE couldn't get by.
If her intent wasn't to impede, what is she doing?
Yeah, look, see, here, hold it. Let me back that up. I'm sorry. You see it right there. Look how little room there is there. So they say, because they were able to get by, then she wasn't really obstructing.
And of course, they don't want to squeeze their car by hers. These federal officers' vehicles are getting rammed all the time.
And stuck on ice. By the way, that's what they were doing at that time. They were stuck on ice. Back where we see them hanging out, they were stuck on ice. So, which also adds credibility to the judgment that it was very dangerous the way Ms. Good was running. Sorry, this is so long, but I really wanted to give people a sense of what the whole scene was and why. All right, so here they finally come up, and you've all seen, the videos of the encounter, but this is the reason that they came up. So Stefan is asking about standing in front of the car. That's another one of the myths, right? Jump to the side.
Well, first of all, there's no requirement that the officer do that. Second of all, he's making split-second decisions. He doesn't have to make the perfect decision. He has to make a reasonable decision. It's slippery. We see people in the video slipping and falling to the street. We see the wheels of the car spinning on the roadway. Mm-hmm. There's no firm traction here. And he's not obligated to increase his jeopardy in an effort to protect her from legal liability. She's making the calls here to drive a car at him. She bears the burden for that. That doesn't impose on him a duty to save her from her own poor judgment.
Also, the way they're talking, it's as if he planted himself in front of a moving vehicle, and they're saying, that's officer-created jeopardy. But as I interpret the video, he didn't put himself in front of a moving vehicle. He put himself in front of a stationary vehicle. And when she started to drive, he did start to move further away, and he was sort of at the corner of the car when she hit him.
Well, Jeff, also, I mean, he didn't walk from the driver's side to the front of her car. He had made a complete circle, or was trying to make a complete circle around her car, and ended up at the front of her car. Not because he positioned himself there intentionally, because he was completing his circuit, I guess.
Yeah, he was recording the car, I assume compiling evidence in case she was a serial harasser. Now, what about, you've been an officer, Greg. Is it true that you would never walk behind or in front of a car when it's stationary? And by the way, her apologists are making a big deal out of how friendly she was. Well, that also works against their argument here, because if she's so friendly and her wife isn't in the car, why would the ICE agent think that she's going to drive away?
Yeah. Well, once I had some time on the job, I made a decision early on, because of the amount of motor vehicle stops that I was involved in. I probably used to pull over 5 cars a night between radar and DUI enforcement, and maybe back up another 5 during the course of a shift. So in a week, I was possibly involved in 50 car stops a week, and this goes on for a couple of years, so you develop some experience. I personally would never walk in front of a suspect's vehicle with the engine running. If it was not running, then I would pass in front of it. If not, I would not pass behind it or in front of it. I would walk along the sides, but I would not put myself in that position. That's my personal preference. And I don't think federal law enforcement probably gets enough instruction on how to safely conduct a motor vehicle stop, because they don't do it very often. It's not part of their regular duties like it is a police officer. But that being said, he would have no reason to suspect that she's now going to decide to aggressively try to escape from a legal arrest.
Yeah, that's the key right there. So, I mean, I'm not a fan of this, really a pretty new concept that's been developed, officer-created jeopardy. We pay officers to engage in jeopardy, and so we don't have to. I mean, if an officer could never put himself in a position of jeopardy, every time he arrests a suspect or makes a traffic stop, he's putting himself in jeopardy. Those are some of the most dangerous things a police officer can do. Yes. So I think it's a ridiculous notion on its face. Now, there is a generally accepted doctrine these days that what you don't want officers to do is, if there's a car you have reason to believe might try to speed off, or is in motion, to place yourself in front of that car just so you have an excuse to shoot the driver. That's frowned
right.
upon. But
that's
the
what I
difference there
think
is
makes sense.
There you have a reason to believe the car is going to race at you. He doesn't have this here. This woman hasn't acted in a threatening way. She's obstructing, she's impeding, but she's not slamming her car into other vehicles or threatening to do anything of the sort. She's just blocking the roadway. He's just walking around the vehicle collecting video evidence. He would have no reason to believe she was suddenly, her wife was suddenly going to shout at her to drive off, and she was going to make the decision to floor the gas pedal, spin the tires, and drive the car into him.
All right, well, let's look at that. We saw a portion of this in the opening, but let's take a look at it again now. All right, so I'm not saying this other agent should be blamed exactly, but if you're going to blame any agent, I think it's fair in defense of Jonathan Ross, the agent who's the shooter, to point out that he didn't know his colleague was going to try to pull her out of the car either. That's another reason why it's not fair to say he should have known that it's going to be dangerous, because it's all just mellow up until that point. The wife's not in the car, and then all of a sudden one of his colleagues comes up, and he didn't know that his colleague was going to do that.
Yeah. And it's very common, of course, this is just normal human nature, for people to see a video like this of a, let's call it a bad outcome event, right? I'm sure even the officer would wish this woman was still alive, that he hadn't been compelled to shoot her. No one's happy that she had to die in this event. We see the video. We know it's a bad outcome event because we've seen the video. And then we do an analysis as if at every second in the video, everybody knows that this will be the outcome that's going to occur. Nobody knows that at this point. Nobody.
All right, now you can't see Agent Ross, but he's already at the corner of the car. So he did try to get out of the way, and he almost made it. So that's another thing. So what if he were 3 inches more to his side? All these people are saying, well, he was wrong to be in front of the car. So then what? You're going to say she's not driving dangerously because he's a few inches away and now she's more clear of him? She's still driving dangerously, right?
And by the way, if he tries to step out of the way, what's to keep her from just turning the steering wheel in his direction? And people get hit by cars. Cars go sideways. We don't normally think of cars going sideways, but we all know if we've backed up a vehicle, we're backing up, we turn the wheel, the front of the car swings out, right? That happens moving forward too. So even if you were standing next to the vehicle, you can be struck by the vehicle if it turns into your direction.
Well, plus the fact that, Andrew, that with the conditions of the road, I'm surprised that the car didn't fishtail out to the left and strike him toward the back of the car.
I mean, if people are supposed to have that kind of reaction capacity, then why didn't the driver just dodge the bullets?
Yeah.
So what about the way CBS, that was a CBS clip I was showing before. Listen to the way they narrated.
Trump administration maintains the agent opened fire to avoid being run over, but the direction of the tires appears to be facing away from the officer to the right.
Well, first of all, the officer,
how relevant is that?
Yeah. the officer almost certainly could not see the direction of the tires. So how would that be useful information to him? He can't make that analysis.
It'd be
and again, even if he could see it, she could just turn back into
distance to the hood of the car. He would never be able to see those tires.
Right.
That's true. But I think one reason it's worth mentioning at least is in case anybody's accusing her of trying to intentionally hit him. But I don't. Most of the people most of the people.
He doesn't know that.
What she was intending is completely irrelevant, and it doesn't have anything to do with the justification for the.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, and I don't think that hardly anybody who's on our side of it, so to speak, is even accusing her of intentionally doing it. You know, you're familiar with Andy McCarthy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So here's something from a column he wrote saying exactly what you're saying. It doesn't matter.
No, again, the legal question is, did the officer have a reasonable perception that he was facing an imminent unlawful threat of death or serious bodily injury? You'll notice the driver's state of mind is not in that question. It's completely irrelevant. She may have been trying to drive away. She may have been trying to just leave and go about her day. It doesn't make any difference. If she's conducting herself in a manner that can be reasonably perceived as an imminent threat of deadly unlawful force, that's all that's required from him to be justified in using deadly defensive force. Doesn't matter what her actual intent was.
Look, this guy Stefan in the Bronx. Nice man, but man, when he has a fantasy that he won't let go of, he clings to it.
Andrew, I'd like to ask a question. It's related, but a little bit off. Only because I've seen these comments bandied about on different social platforms. Criminal culpability of the partner for encouraging her to flee. I don't see how they can ever make a successful criminal prosecution of that. But I'm just curious because so many people keep suggesting that she has some sort of criminal liability here.
It would be tough to make. So there's 3 avenues a prosecutor could really pursue to try to get what we normally call derivative liability, right? She wasn't the driver herself, but she should have some criminal liability regardless. One of them is conspiracy. If they plan this out ahead of time, all the conspirators are responsible for the worst acts of each of them. But then you'd have to have evidence that like this was a plan ahead of time. I don't see how you would get that evidence. Right. She could be an accessory or an abettor. But then again, she'd have to know that the driver's intent was to commit an assault on the officer. And I just think it's a stretch to do that. She'll say, I said drive, baby, drive because I wanted her to escape, not because I wanted her to hit the officer, right? So I wasn't aiding and abetting an assault on the officer. The third way would be felony murder. But felony murder applies when you're committing some kind of agreed upon predicate underlying crime, like you're robbing a liquor store or something like that, where it's predictable that there's a threat of deadly force violence that could occur. Again, the wife on the side of the car would say, I had no idea anything like this could possibly happen. The worst I was advocating is that she tried to get away. I certainly was not advocating anything that would have had a foreseeable risk of harm to any person.
Yeah, thank you.
So
I only asked because so many people have thrown that out there that I wanted
including Andrew. I saw you flirting with this possibility on your podcast.
It's tough. I mean, I won't lie. If I were the prosecutor, there would be arguments I could make, but they wouldn't be ones I'd be very confident of.
Okay, thank you.
So today, some DOJ agents resigned, and I've seen conflicting reports as to why. Some people are saying it's in protest over the fact that the locals have been frozen out of the investigation. But in some of the very same articles that say that, they're quoting somebody from DOJ saying, no, they had already handed in their resignation. Do either of you know any more about that?
I've just seen the Harmeet Dillon post where she's saying, my understanding is some of these people had already planned to resign. This is just a coincidence of timing. By the way, in my experience, federal prosecutors don't really give a shit what the local law enforcement guys want. They'll work with them cooperatively because over the long term, you want to have a cooperative relationship. Sure. But no one's going to quit their job at the Department of Justice over because the local cops have been offended. That notion is ridiculous. But of course, the Department of Justice is full of lefty wackos. I mean, scores of them have already resigned rather than
they're Obama and Biden holdovers, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right. So they're true believers for the progressive fascist cause. So any of them that are saying, oh, I quit because I didn't like how the local cops were being treated, that's nonsense. If they quit, it was for political purposes. Right.
What do you think of Harmeet Dillon? She runs the Civil Rights Division of DOJ. What do you think of her?
I mean, I think of her like I think a lot of the Trump officials these days. I think she's eminently competent. She's an excellent, outstanding attorney. There's no question about that. She says the right things, like so many of them do. I feel like I'm not seeing as much action as I would like to see. I'm not seeing the perp walks. I'm not seeing the convictions. I'm not seeing the plea deals I would like to see. Now, of course, what she does is civil litigation stuff. So I'm kind of speaking more generally of the administration. They're very good at posting posts on X that are very bravado and pounding on the chest. But I don't see that much productivity.
We're talking like Pam Bondi, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So there are rumors that Trump is fed up with her now because nothing's happening, which got me thinking about Matt Gaetz and how Trump originally wanted him, but then it became apparent that he wouldn't get approved by Congress. So,
well, I will say this: if I needed somebody to defend me in court, it would be Harmeet Dillon, above Pam Bondi, above Matt Gaetz. I mean, she's just a world-class attorney, and I don't know to what extent she might be constrained by internal political factors that we wouldn't know anything about. She's quite aggressive about the civil lawsuits, which is, of course, mostly what the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice does.
Andrew, do you think? I'm sorry, Jeff. Do you think at some point do you foresee Harmeet replacing Pam Bondi?
I don't know. I don't know why Pam Bondi is still. I don't know what Pam Bondi does.
Well, that's what I was going to get at. Is she already seems like she has a lot of authority, and could Trump have gotten around them not? I assume it was a realistic recognition that he wasn't going to get approved by Congress. Could he have gotten around that by simply putting Gaetz in the DOJ in a position like Harmeet Dillon, not specifically that, but something high up where he could do a lot of the same thing he would do if he were the Attorney General?
I guess I don't really know Matt Gaetz's capabilities. I'm not trying to be negative about him. I literally just don't know. So I don't know. Is he an attorney?
Yeah.
Okay, so but I don't know anything about his experience.
But I'm asking
or
about anybody. In other words, could Trump get around not having to worry about Congress approving it by putting somebody in who doesn't need approval, but they simply have a lot of authority?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. And would that person take that job? I mean, it's not the same job to be head of the Civil Rights Division and to be the Attorney General of the United States. Those are two very different positions.
No, but I mean, some other one that's more in the realm of criminal law.
I mean, listen, it's worth considering. I don't know. And unfortunately, my visitations to the White House to meet with Trump have been few and far between.
All right. Earlier, you were talking about how, some lawyers don't necessarily know what they're talking about.
Most of them.
So, yeah. Well, I mean, on one hand, it's just plain fun to criticize some of these legal commentators that are in the media. But I also think that it's a public service to let the audience know who they should trust and who they shouldn't trust. Can we go over a few names of people that you trust and those that you think are the biggest clowns and aren't to be believed?
One of the most common requests I get is from people asking me to recommend an attorney in their area they could use if they're ever in need of a use of force attorney. And I just don't do it. I don't do it preemptively because then what happens is they start calling that attorney's office, but they don't have any need for actual legal services in the moment. And it just becomes, my friends get mad at me then. They're saying, why are all these people calling my office? Because they could get hundreds of calls in a day. None of them are going to lead to legal work. Because when is that person going to need them as a defense attorney? When they shoot somebody? When is that going to happen? I mean, hopefully never, right? But could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So if someone is in need of actual legal representation, then I'm happy to make a recommendation. But I just don't throw names out there in the public.
Well, I just talking about, like you commented on Andy McCarthy, the legal commentators who are in the media, like Jonathan Turley, for example. Nobody's going to call his office necessarily, but am I putting you in an uncomfortable position just by asking you if you like Turley? No.
Oh, Jonathan Turley's I'm not saying he would never make a mistake on use of force law. He has a very broad expertise. It can't be perfect everywhere, but he's a very, very smart guy. Andy McCarthy really strikes me as more politically oriented than legal oriented. And I would have less confidence in what he's writing about use of force events. There's a lot of these former DOJ guys who write like for National Review Online, and everybody likes them, and they're nice guys, and they have a great reputation. And I'm not trying to make this personal, but when it comes to the technical aspects of a use of force legal analysis, I see them make a lot of mistakes. It doesn't make them bad people or bad lawyers. It's just they make errors because it's not their area of expertise.
Oh, I mean, no different, Andrew, than somebody who does nothing but contract law and wills. I mean, that becomes their wheelhouse, and they're very, very good at it. But you won't want them necessarily representing you in a criminal case.
Look, I would tell anybody, don't ask me anything about will and estate law. Don't ask me anything about tax law. I don't know anything about those things. Don't ask me about my personal experience doing federal prosecutions. I've never done a federal prosecution. My wheelhouse is very small. I just have a high degree of expertise there. These other lawyers have great amounts of expertise I will never have. But I do see errors made in this particular narrow niche.
What about shipwrecked crew?
Bill's a smart guy. I like Bill. He's a smart guy. Someone was asking me about him earlier today. And I said, I'm disagreeable by nature, just from being a lawyer. And I'm trying to think of a time I've disagreed with Bill, shipwrecked crew analysis. And I can't think of one. There has to be one. I can't believe I've never disagreed with him. But he's reliably on the mark.
Yeah. He told me he knows you.
Right. We've chatted a bit.
Yes, he is. We have another podcast called The Winers on Thursday nights, and we sip wine while we're talking, which I happen to be doing tonight anyway. But that's
Bill is a very, very smart. I would disagree with Bill with great caution. I would want to be absolutely sure that I had all my ducks in a row.
Well, there you have it, folks. So join us Thursday night on The Winers, same time, 7 p.m., and he will be our guest Thursday night. What a week to have Andrew and Bill on two different nights. If this doesn't disabuse people of the myths they're clinging to, I don't know what will. So let's do a little devil's advocate before we say bye-bye to you, and also want to tell people they can get your book at lawofselfdefense/free book, right?
Yeah, and I can explain the book. The book first of all, it's a very easy read. You can check it out on Amazon. It's 5 stars, but don't buy it on Amazon. They'll charge you 20 or 25 bucks for the book, plus shipping and handling. We actually give the book away for free. We do ask you to cover the shipping and handling, but the book we give you for free. And what it teaches you is how to be hard to convict if you're ever compelled to use force in defense of yourself, your family, or your property.
Yeah, I was referring to you as a self-defense expert, but I guess people could take that two ways. Like you don't teach martial arts classes. You mean how to empower people to know how the law will protect them if they use violence. And
that's the expertise I brand. Yes, I mean I am technically a firearm self-defense instructor, but that's just a hobby. That's not my core area of expertise. When people are asking me for expert opinions, it's the legal stuff.
Right. So you're not teaching karate.
No, I do BJJ though.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good for you.
All right. So if you had to theorize, let's say a lawsuit was filed charging Jonathan Good, the ICE agent, with whatever, negligence, whatever.
Ross.
What can you imagine? What did I say? Oh, Good. I'm sorry. Jonathan Ross. Can you just imagine what they might cook up as the accusation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and any good attorney is, if they're a critical thinker, they're able to argue both sides, right? So if I were the prosecutor here, what would I argue? I would argue officer created risk. I would argue he stepped in front of the vehicle when he had reason to know she was in some way unstable. Normal people don't do this kind of stuff. I would argue that the second and third shots he fired couldn't be justified, even if the first one could, because by then he was next to the vehicle and it was proceeding past him. I would argue that if he was going to claim that he continued to shoot because the car was a threat to other people down the road, there was no way he would have been aware whether or not there were people down the road or not. For all he knew, she would escape and then immediately slow down to a safe speed. These are all the kinds of arguments I would expect a prosecutor to make.
If I may be a little self-indulgent for a moment, since I'm among those who are being accused of having some anti-immigrant bias or pro-Trump bias, let me just show a few seconds of my initial reaction on one of our other podcasts. This was the very day of the shooting. All right, you mentioned ICE. There was a shooting in Minneapolis today. ICE basically murdered somebody is what it looks like to me, although our president claims it was done in self-defense and the agent was run over. But here is a slow motion video of it that leaves no doubt the agent shot this woman from the side of the car, which to me makes it quite apparent it wasn't really necessary. And that's because my first reaction, my first assumption turned out to be wrong. And I just accepted that.
Well, he did shoot her from the side of the car. I mean, he fired shots from the side of the car. The question is whether or not those would nevertheless be justified. Again, his justification doesn't have to be just defense of himself. It's defense of other officers. It's defense of other people in public. She's using the car as a deadly weapon, right? I think any reasonable person can agree to that. If she had shot at him with a gun and missed and then was running away with that gun still in hand, does he just have to let her go? No, the law says if you're a fleeing felon, still armed, still a danger to the community, the officers can use deadly force to stop your flight. That's the parallel here.
Andrew, if we run out of time, keeping that last remark in mind, I have a scenario that I would like to run past you that I had some personal experience with, and but I don't think it's appropriate necessarily for here. So if you could just give me maybe 2 minutes when we get done, I'd like to see what your thoughts are.
Yeah,
if they,
sure.
They conflict with mine, or if they are in alignment.
Another thing I should mention is that we're watching this frame by frame, but no human being operates frame by frame. Officers are not told to fire one shot and then do an interview with the suspect and see if he's okay before they can fire a second shot. Pistols are very underpowered defensive weapons, especially, by the way, when you fire a round, even a rifle round, but especially a pistol round through a windshield, you have no idea where that bullet's going to go after it passes through the windshield. It could go in almost any direction. With a pistol, generally, you don't actually know if you're hitting the person unless you can see a visible reaction from them. You don't know if you're scoring hits, much less decisive hits that are going to stop the threat. So officers are trained to fire multiple shots.
Well,
it takes time to make the decision to fire, right? We all know what reaction time is. It also takes time to make the decision to stop using force, to make that evaluation. And in a dynamic situation where a suspect may be, turning or spinning, or a car is moving, or things are in motion, those time delays can result in shots being fired under circumstances where you wouldn't fire the shot if you had all year to contemplate it. But you don't have all year. You have a split second to make the decision.
And I think those 3 shots were all in less than 2 seconds, I believe, when somebody broke it down frame by frame. So
yeah, like 0.6 second splits, something like that.
Yeah.
I think it was the same Supreme Court case. This might be the, I'm not sure if this is the quote, but the court said essentially, if the first shot was lawful, then the multiple shots that followed are also lawful.
Right. How many shots are you allowed to fire? You're allowed to fire as many shots as it takes to neutralize the threat. That could be 1, that could be 3, that could be 30. However many it takes to neutralize it. As long as there continues to be an imminent threat of unlawful deadly force harm, you continue to be privileged to use deadly defensive force to stop that threat.
And Jeff, I think I sent you and Ryan a link that the average police, use of force is just under 6 rounds per incident, I think is the average. I thought it was, right? So that's not an unreasonable number, with 3 being the number.
Yeah, the numbers tend to get high when you have a number of officers. They all have their guns out.
Oh, that's
on the
true.
suspect, something happens.
Each
of them fires 3 or 4 rounds, but it ends up being 30 rounds. The person's shot 30 times.
No, good point. I thought it was per officer, but you're right. That does make a difference.
And another factor here, of course, is, no offense to police officers, but they miss a lot. I mean, police are not really highly trained marksmen. They qualify a couple times a year. I've shot competitively all my adult life. A lot of times cops show up to competitions, shoot once, get smoked by a bunch of fat accountants and plumbers and never come back again. They're not world-class shooters. And that's not to criticize them. Very little of their job involves shooting at people. 99% of their job is not shooting at people. They have a lot of other skills they have to have.
SWAT team or special response team or tactical team, you're not going to get that kind of range time in unless you are a gun aficionado, basically.
Right, unless it's a personal hobby of yours. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, if you're SWAT HRT, all you do is lift weights and shoot guns. But otherwise, you have a more normal job as a law enforcement officer.
And
cops miss a lot. Cops miss all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, and even highly trained police officers under stressful conditions with variable, light and whatever, the time of day, a vehicle moving, somebody turning, somebody slipping. Even the best of shots aren't always very accurate.
Now, not that it's legally significant, but there's a former cop who's a YouTuber named Nathan. I can't remember his last name. And he was saying that he thinks the second 2 shots were done accidentally. Have you heard that theory? Has that occurred to you from watching it? I'm not a guy who handles guns, so I don't really know even what to look for.
I mean, that kind of thing can happen. I wouldn't expect that to happen here. It's more common. One of the reasons you tend to get a lot of shots when there's multiple officers around is something we call a sympathetic discharge, where the first shot fires, everyone hears a bang, and they all start shooting too. Based off the first shot that was fired. And that's not necessarily illegitimate. They're allowed to rely on the perceptions of their fellow officer who's, standing someplace else, seeing slightly different things. If he decided it was appropriate to use deadly force, they can use deadly force too. But they didn't actually consciously make the decision to fire. The gun's pointed, they hear the discharge, they fire the gun. But this doesn't look to me like that kind of, he's controlling. It's a very steady paced series of shots and very deliberate. We say 0.6 second splits, and that sounds like not a lot of time. Most people who shoot handguns competitively can easily have 0.2 second splits. And if they're really good, they can get below that. So he could have fired 3 shots in the time it took him to fire each of these 1 shots if he wanted to do that. So he was actually shooting with deliberation.
And Jeff, just the fact that he put all three on target I would find makes it difficult to try to say those were accidental.
Yeah, accidental shots usually miss.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, that stuck out to me as being a little dubious, but I watched the guy do like a 20, 30-minute video, and he made a lot of sense in general, but that's why I wanted to bring it up, because he did make a lot of sense otherwise. All right, before we get to Greg's off-topic question, and I think we're all on the edge of our seats.
No. This is going to be off-air topic, not on
air. Okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
That's okay.
When you touched on it earlier, but I think there's a little bit more that can be said about the jurisdiction here and whether this is going to be strictly handled by the feds and what's going on in Minnesota and all that. Is this
right? If he could be charged and prosecuted by Minnesota state authorities, he would be cooked. It would be another Derek Chauvin unjust prosecution. He would just get railroaded. There's no question about that. That cannot happen now because the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, would immediately move it to federal court and a federal judge would dismiss it under the Supremacy Clause. The state does not it's another Supreme Court decision in re Neagle. Neagle was the name of the sheriff involved. So this sheriff was guarding a judge. The judge was being threatened by somebody, and that person showed up and attacked the judge, and the sheriff shot the attacker and killed him. But the local authorities felt that the sheriff had been overzealous. The marshal, rather, not sheriff, federal marshal, had been overzealous, and they wanted to prosecute him, and they did start to prosecute him, and it got up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said no. If a federal officer is operating within the scope of his duties, the state has no authority to prosecute him. Now, if he's not in the scope of his duties, if he's committing a DWI or domestic abuse or stealing something, then that's not his duties. He can be prosecuted. But if it's within the scope of his federal duties, state authorities have no legal privilege to prosecute him. So they would bring it to federal court, get it dismissed. Here's the risk, though. He did kill someone. There's no statute of limitations on murder. Minnesota could just wait this out, and if the next president, the next administration is a Democrat administration, go to charge this guy confident that a Democrat administration will not move this case to federal court and will not get it dismissed. And then he could be subject to state prosecution, even though I would say that's wrongful. But it would be legal to do.
Well, could Ross himself, Ross's attorney, obviously, file to get it changed to federal court, or would he be cooked?
I don't know, because we've never had a case like this, really. The umbrella of authority that's protecting him from state prosecution is a federal authority. It's a privilege of the federal sovereignty of the government. If they're not interested in applying that, I'm not sure he can apply it in his own right. I would certainly make that argument if I was his attorney. Yeah, we're going right to federal court. But it's not as obvious a case as here, where or in Neagle, where the federal government was fighting for the protection of their law enforcement officer.
Well, he has some money in case he needs it. Would you take the case for $500,000, Andy?
No, no. So my legal practice is a consulting practice. All my clients are other attorneys. I consult other attorneys. I haven't been a go-to-court lawyer in a long time. And one of the consequences of having a very deep expertise in a narrow subject is you kind of give up maintaining your expertise in the 1,000 other things that are involved in arguing in trial. So if I'm in court and I'm on the witness stand, I'm an expert witness.
There you see billionaire Bill Ackman donated $10,000. And I also saw...
By the way, this money, it looks like a lot of money. It goes quick. It goes quick. I consult on a lot of just, normal people shoot each other. Somebody dies. They get prosecuted for an unlawful killing, for manslaughter or murder. They'll go through a couple $100,000 easy pre-trial before they ever get to trial. You've all heard of the George Zimmerman trial, right? George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin. Yeah. George Zimmerman's legal defense was almost $2 million. $1.7 million. So the money goes fast.
They shouldn't have capped it. Who's ever organizing this fund should have capped it at $550,000. They shouldn't have done that, I guess.
No, there should be no limit. No, I would want I would want an infinite amount of money.
Why would they cap it, Jeff?
I guess who's ever running the fundraiser can decide to do that, right? It says $521,000 of $550,000.
They can change it. They can raise it if they want to. I think normally you set a goal to kind of incentivize people to try to get to the goal.
Now, there's also a fundraiser for him on Give, Send, Go, a different platform, which calls into question, who are these people and how, do they really check out and make sure that the money goes to the right place?
So what platform is this?
This is GoFundMe, but I also saw it on Give, Send, Go.
So I wouldn't be surprised if GoFundMe sends all the money back to the donors. Because their policy is if they don't like you, they just won't allow you to use the platform.
Which I Which is why that Give, Send, Go, I think, is so popular now because
it's different, right? I've actually met that guy. I was on Tim Pool with him. I'm sorry, dude. I'm forgetting his name. I feel so bad. I spent several hours with him on Tim Pool. Really, really nice guy. And that was
you're talking about the founder of Give, Send, Go?
Give, Send, Go. Yeah. That was involving the case where the two athletes at the high school field, one stabbed the other, the young black athlete stabbed the young right, and he was raising money. Give, Send, Go was raising money for the defense and other expenses of the stabber, and taking a lot of heat for it. But his position is, look, we just don't look at what the underlying cause is. This is just a platform for people to be able to gather money, and we're not going to make judgment calls about whether you're good enough or not. As a criminal defense attorney, I want everyone to have a well-funded defense. I don't want anyone to get convicted because they did not have enough money for their legal defense, no matter who it is. If they're going to get convicted, and frankly, in that particular stabbing case, I think conviction is the only just outcome there, but that's a separate case. But if they're going to get convicted, I don't want there to be a sense that maybe he was convicted because he didn't have enough resources for his defense.
All right, I just want to make sure we cover everything. This is another one that's circulating around the internet, that the policy is to not shoot at a moving vehicle. But I think people, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, people are ignoring the word solely. Isn't that the key there?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's a reasonable policy, right? Well, first of all, it's a policy. It's not a law. It's not a crime to do this. Every police department policy, and Greg can correct me if he feels I'm wrong here, but every police policy should be understood as essentially saying, under these circumstances, you should do this thing or not do this thing, unless you have a really good reason for breaking the policy. There's a role for officer discretion because the people writing the policy cannot possibly foresee the infinite number of scenarios that can occur in the real world. So if you break the policy, you can be subject to some kind of employment discipline, and then you'd have an opportunity to say, hey, listen, I know I technically broke the rule, but this is a busload of nuns would have died if I hadn't broken the policy, and it would be forgivable. It's not a crime to violate the policy.
Correct.
Also, the policy says solely to stop a fleeing vehicle. And I think it's a reasonable policy because what they want to avoid, first of all, it's not that easy to hit a fleeing vehicle. So you're more likely to miss than usual. Now you're sending rounds through the community. But let's say you hit the driver and you neutralize the driver. He's no longer able to function. Now you have a 2-ton missile going down the street. So if the only reason is to prevent the escape of the vehicle, they don't want you to do that. But there can be very good reasons for nevertheless wanting to stop the vehicles. Like the person driving it continues to be a threat. Say it's a car that's driving through a Christmas parade, mowing people over. You have to stop that guy or he's going to keep killing people. So that would be a justified reason for breaking the policy. Or here, this woman just tried to kill the officer, apparently, reasonably perceived effort to kill the officer with a car. Now she's continuing with the weapon in hand. Would be a justification. And when he fired his last shot, it's not like the car was down the street. It was right beside him.
So are you guys willing to pretend you're mind readers for a minute and speculate what the main reason or reasons he fired was? I mean, what I'm thinking of is one reason would be because he perceives that she's driving the car at him, so it's in self-defense because of that. Another reason being that she's endangering others in the vicinity. What do you, is that, am I asking too much to read his mind?
No. Can I go first, Greg, and then ask for your insight from, because I've never been a law enforcement officer.
Nope.
But I've been involved in a lot of use of force legal instruction for law enforcement officers. And what I often encourage them to do, because, you can't be doing a detailed legal analysis while you're holding a gun on somebody, right? You pretty much have to have this stuff pre-programmed ahead of time. That's why we send police to the academies. And what I encourage officers to do is when they're in a situation where they might eminently have to use deadly defensive force, to kind of mentally draw a red line, right? Like that guy has a knife. I'm not going to shoot him yet. He's not an imminent threat yet. But if he steps past that manhole cover, I'm going to fire. So there's no hesitation at the critical moment. You've already made the decision. That's when he's going to be an imminent threat that I can lawfully use force against. This officer may have done something similar. He might have said, listen, as long as that car doesn't lunge at me, that hood doesn't race up, the engine doesn't, I'm not going to shoot her. But the moment it does, that tells me she's intent on hurting me and my fellow officers. and I'm going to shoot until I've neutralized that threat to myself and my officers. So when she stomps on the gas and the wheels spin up and the hood lifts, as it does when a car's under acceleration, he began shooting.
What do you think, Greg?
I'll pass. Thank you. Well, first of all, I don't think it's a binary choice. I think it could be both. He could feel that his life is in danger, and also his colleagues or civilians' lives can be in danger. So I don't think it has to be either one or the other. I think it could be a combination of the two. But I also think a lot of it was reflexive, and I'm not saying that in a negative or accusatory way, but because of the split second timing. I'm not sure he could process all of those factors effectively. So I tend to think it was more of a reflexive response, but I'm not saying that in a negative way either.
It's worth remembering, the gun never comes out of the holster until the wheels are already spinning on the asphalt or the ice on the asphalt. The wheels are in motion, then his gun comes out of the holster.
It's not funny, but it struck me as funny. On Facebook, some woman criticized me and said, of course, she had no police background whatsoever. I looked at her profile, but she made some remark that, my understanding is in police training, you're supposed to always fire your handgun with both hands. And in this case, he didn't, because he had one hand on the cell phone and one hand on his gun. And I said, well, he was 3 for 3. So what is the complaint you're making?
Right. And right? Again, that's another example of, I don't know if it's a formal policy, but generally, if you have both hands available, you'll shoot better with both hands on the gun.
Correct.
So when do you shoot with one hand on the gun? Well, when you have a good reason not to put both hands on the gun. Maybe you're protecting somebody with your other hand. Maybe you have an object in your other hand. Maybe you're blocking someone. There's lots of reasons to shoot with one hand.
I mean, in the old days, normally you'd have your flashlight in one hand because the guns didn't have flashlight mounted systems. So you might have your walkie-talkie in one hand and your handgun in the other hand, because we didn't have the little mics on the jacket, or you'd have a traditional flashlight and your handgun, and so you would one-handed that way. If you're using a shield, you're using one hand on the shield and one hand is on the handgun. So there's a number of instances where you're forced to go with one hand, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with it or improper with it.
Agent Ross certainly wasn't run over, but do you guys think that the car made contact with him?
It certainly looks that way to me from his camera video, but it's worth keeping in mind. I see this error a lot. People say, well, the person wasn't hurt, the person wasn't scratched. You don't have to suffer the slightest injury to be privileged in using even deadly defensive force to defend yourself. You're allowed to defend yourself against the harm that's about to occur, the imminent harm that's about to occur. If we just imagine that she had a gun instead of a car, this would be obvious, right? He's not obliged to wait until she shoots him before he can defend himself. He's allowed to defend himself against the imminent shot. So even if he wasn't hit by the car, he's allowed to defend himself against the imminent threat of being hit by the car.
It's like saying someone took a shot at you and they missed you, and yet you shot them back. And it's like, yeah, well, they tried to kill me, but they weren't a good shot. But that doesn't necessarily mean I can't return fire.
Well, one reason it might be relevant is because he left the scene. So I want to ask you guys if that's considered appropriate if he's not injured. Or obviously, if he is injured, then he is entitled to go get medical treatment.
I mean, the only time leaving the scene is an issue is if it could be consciousness of guilt evidence. Somebody's involved with a fight, they kill somebody, they run away. But consciousness of guilt evidence is essentially, even what you did was wrong, right? So you're fleeing to avoid identification and avoid accountability. That can't be the case here. He knows everyone, certainly his fellow officers know who he is. Everyone's going to know who he is. He's not avoiding any accountability by leaving. And by the way, it's always lawful to leave a scene for purposes of safety. I mean, this is already an angry crowd. Now someone's been shot and killed. It's not going to calm down after that's happened. And if anything, he could be a catalyst. His presence could be a catalyst for more
my
heated
understanding is he
interaction.
went to the hospital. No, I
thought so.
That's what I'm getting at, but I don't think that's been confirmed, and so that's why I was asking.
Lots of good reasons for him to leave the scene.
Yeah.
Either he was actually.
Greg, you agree with that? As an experienced cop, officer-involved shooting, you don't necessarily have to stay on the scene?
Absolutely not. No.
Right. Now, here's a video. There's a lot of video.
They don't want him on the scene.
Right.
There's a lot of videos circulating. This is one that hasn't been circulating all that much. I'm not even sure it's real. Of course, that's always a possibility nowadays. But in this video, it looks like he's hit. Take a look and tell me if you think not only is he hit, but is this real, this video? Have you guys seen this one?
I have.
No, I'm not.
So it does look like he's hit.
It certainly looks like he's hit. It's consistent. All the motion, the motion of his body is consistent with being hit. Even more telling is his own cell phone footage. When that car comes at him, you can hear a sound of impact. Now, maybe it was just his hand or his arm on the hood. You know, you can't see that part of it. But it's not like the car just slipped back past him and there was no contact. There's nothing about those videos that suggest that.
Well, Jeff, also I saw someone had taken a still photo and blew it up, and it looked like there was some minor front end damage to that left front corner, but it could be old damage too. So because the car wasn't in great shape. So I'm not saying that was the result of the impact, but there's the chance
the car crashed up ahead after that, though.
Yes, well, that's true too. It could have dimpled that side of the car. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, it hit a telephone pole. I'm pretty sure it's total.
But I'm pretty sure, Jeff, what I'm referring to is footage that was taken before the collision.
Okay. All right.
You know what I'm saying? When he was walking around the car, someone took a still shot of that left front corner, and it looked like it was already dimpled. So that would make it old damage, though. So yeah, you're right.
By the way, there's lots of good reasons for him to want to get medical care. First of all, you often don't know if you're hurt if you're involved in a physically forcible event. I've personally been cut down the length of my arm so deep I could see the bone inside, and I had no idea I was cut until somebody told me.
Ooh.
I didn't feel it. There was no pain. There was no blood. It was like a piece of butcher meat had been cut open. So it's very common that people don't even know that they're injured. Second of all, you know, in civil litigation like car accidents, when someone's suing, they'll often say, well, did you go to the hospital afterwards? And they'll say no. And they'll say, well, that suggests you weren't really injured, right? So if only for his legal defense, he'd want to make sure he goes to the hospital and gets checked over.
Okay. I think a lot of what's driving this anti-ICE bias as it regards this incident is that people don't like ICE in general. They think this is an agency that's out of control, and they're upset about the masks and so forth. I have something in mind that I think would be an easy solution, but let me ask you guys, do you think it's hard to tell proportion-wise when we see these videos where it looks like they may be abusing people's rights? That's, of course, the sort of video that people are going to post. You're not going to see videos of them just, you know, thousands and thousands of times conducting lawful arrests. But do either of you think that ICE is abusing people to some extraordinary degree and should be held accountable?
No, because if that were true, we'd be seeing videos in context of the abuse. We'd be seeing the not just the event, but what happened before the event, what happened after the event. Instead, we're giving all these little 5-second slices. We're giving slices of what's happening after the offending conduct that's leading to someone's arrest. And you have to keep in mind, these are paid, organized protesters. They're trained in how to behave. So one thing you'll notice happens all the time is, saw it today, another woman in a car, acting aggressively with the car, driving it, operating it as if it were a weapon, very aggressive. And then the moment they get her out of the car, she starts weeping and crying and begging, please just let me go. They're trained to do that because they know there's 100 cameras by their friends around, and the cameras are going to capture the weeping, and it looks abusive, and especially the majority of the electorate that are women look at that and they go, oh my God, why are the police treating that woman that way? This is all theater. So
hey, Andrew, if it's the video I'm thinking of, a dark car with a woman with dark hair and a dark car, yeah. Well, then she claimed immediately that she was autistic and disabled.
Right. So you know,
the autism rate in Minnesota must be like 90% at this point. Between the autism centers and the people that claim that as soon as they get arrested.
Right. And every claim of abuse I see, when 24 hours go by and you have fuller evidence, it's debunked. So where are the claims of abuse that are not debunked? And by the way, if an officer is found to have used excessive force, I'd be the first person to say he should be prosecuted for it. And I expect the DOJ would too. They don't want to make their political problems even greater than they are and have actual dirty cops on the force. No one would be more motivated than them to get these people out.
All right, I have a thought about how to balance two competing considerations. I want to see if you guys agree with me. On one hand, we have the masks, and that's upsetting people. My feeling is that the masks aren't really a problem in and of themselves. What matters is being able to hold the officers accountable if they act unlawfully. So it seems to me that we should just let them wear the mask, not complain, because they have a pretty good reason. They're getting doxxed and harassed, and so are their families. Right. And that's the reason for it. That's a pretty good reason, I think. But on the other hand, there should be a way to hold them accountable. So my thought is, I don't know if they're always wearing badges or not, but even if they are, it seems kind of small. What if they had badge ID numbers of some sort that was just larger so that we could be sure there's a way to hold them accountable? What do you guys think about?
Well, and in fact, we had a federal judge demand that of some of these ICE operations in an earlier proceeding. The trouble with that is, and again, I'll defer to Greg, given his law enforcement expertise, but I can foresee easy problems with that. One is, if the officer uses the same number every time, he becomes identifiable to the mob as someone they want to target in particular. It's that guy. It's number 119. We got to make sure we take care of number 119. No officer wants to be able to be targeted like that. And if they're going to randomize the numbers each time they go out, the logistics burden of doing that and actually being able to keep track of everyone's number on all the body-worn cameras all the time and then be able to prove that in federal court, and nobody wants to deal with that headache. So I think it's either too dangerous to do that or it's impractical to do that.
All right, I have a response, but let me ask Greg, what do you think?
No, I mean, Andrew brought up a point that I didn't really consider, but I mean... Which is what?
Which one?
That you don't want to have someone being profiled off of their ID number. But, I mean, of course, when I worked, it was a friendlier time toward law enforcement. But, I mean, we had our name tag and our badge number always on our outer garment, whether it was our jacket or our shirt or whatever. So we didn't have any anonymity whatsoever. So I don't think it might be unreasonable to split the, to split the baby in two and say, well, you are going to put your number out on there, not your name, but your number's your number now. Right. I mean,
that's my response.
Members that stayed with us our entire career. So I was 166 when I started and when I left. And so that was how I was identified.
So remember, I framed it as striking a balance between the competing considerations. Mm-hmm. So okay, maybe they'll target them if they know the number, but that's not quite the same thing as actually being able to identify them and find out where they live and harassing their family and so forth. I don't know that too much could be found out just by their number, unless they have some inside information from ICE itself. That would be terrible.
No, I don't mean they would go to the person's home. They'll target him at these ICE officers are on the street every day. Yeah. So if they peppers, like we had just with this event, there was one scene where a protester grabbed an officer's less lethal weapon, and the officer pulls back and puts a powder ball right in the guy's face. Right, it was very funny to watch. But he's famous now. That cop is famous now to these protesters. And if they want to target someone with specificity, it'll be that guy. If they knew his number, they would target him with specificity. Where the brick's going to be going, they're going to be going at that guy. And if I were the officer, it's different when you're an officer with a badge and you're not being engaged by a well-funded, widespread insurgency against federal authority, which is what's happening here. Yeah. These ICE officers are not dealing with random suspects on a one-on-one basis out on the street. These are organized attacks that go on for weeks and weeks. The same protesters, the same ICE officers, they get to know each other just like you would know people you worked with for weeks.
No, I agree.
That's logical, but what about the other consideration, which is that it seems reasonable to be able to hold people accountable.
Well, they can be. They're known to the government. The government's not going to show up in court and say, we have no idea who that officer was. That's not going to happen. If that happens, a federal judge would be perfectly within their rights to utterly lose their S.
Yeah. My concern...
You can swear here. If the mayor of Minneapolis can drop an F-bomb, you can say shit.
Speaking of that whole thing, when he tried to make the comparison, which is worse, me dropping the F-bomb or someone being shot, the difference was that was calculated theater, him dropping that F-bomb. So to try to put it in the same equation of someone reacting within split seconds versus him going out there at a prearranged press conference and deciding to start cursing, it doesn't pass the sniff.
Well, also, he's knocking down a straw man. I mean, there may be some people who didn't like the cuss word, but I think the real problem with that is his attitude.
Yes.
Which regardless of the cuss word, his attitude is abolish ICE. Yeah. It's like, well, that's not even a full idea.
Well, and every time you say
get rid of ICE, and then what? Just not have immigration enforcement, or do you have something else in mind? I mean,
and every time you use the word murder,
thing that maybe an activist would say, not an elected representative. Yeah.
And every time a politician says she was murdered, what you are saying is that person, Agent Ross, committed a murder. I mean, committed a crime, and that's just completely wrong. If you want to say he killed her, okay, I think we can all live with that. But to say that he murdered her is a conclusion that is not reasonable.
Right. Every murder is a homicide, but not every homicide is a murder.
Thank you.
And I have to say, nothing surprised me more in recent weeks than to learn that Mayor Frey was married to a woman. I would not have expected that from that guy.
I didn't see that one. I didn't have that on my bingo card, Andrew. Especially if you saw the pictures of him in that road race.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah. He's wearing spandex leggings.
Well, did you see in the opening video the sign language guy? That adds another element,
another layer,
another element of comedy.
Now I always try to guess whether those people are actually legitimate signers or they're just going through the motions like we see from time to time. It's so entertaining. I have to say, I've never seen anyone happier in their job than those people.
You're talking about the signers?
The signers, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're getting all their attention. I mean, when else do they do it?
But don't we have this like closed captioning now?
What's that?
I said, don't we have this thing called closed captioning now where we really don't need to have that?
You know, it makes me think of like when Putin is saying something in Russian and then they translate it. I always wonder, well, can we trust the translation? Maybe it's a prank, you know. All right, Andrew, we do a segment every week called Has It Happened to Greg? And what that entails is just showing a few different videos of police encounters, and we comment on it and see if Greg has ever experienced anything like that.
How long were you a street cop, Greg?
Only 5 years. I was uniform for 5 years. I was an FBI agent for 5 years, and then I was with the state of Connecticut for 20 years.
State of Connecticut doing what?
For the chief state's attorney's office. So they would do major criminal investigations.
Okay, investigator for the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, so I think you'll agree that being a street cop, the experiences you have as a street cop and the experiences you have as a FBI special agent are quite different.
Yeah, and the training is quite different too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what I was getting at, Andrew, is we want to be respectful of your time. I would like to invite you to hang with us for that segment, but I also want to give you the opportunity to cut out if it's getting too late.
I know I can stay a little longer.
All right, great.
I still have to pick Andrew's brain over.
Oh, right.
Scenario. Yeah.
All right, let's do Has It Happened to Greg? Oh, and that's his book, by the way, The Thin Blue Lie. He won a lot of money suing the FBI.
Suing the state of Connecticut.
Oh, the state of Connecticut. I mean, sorry about that. All right, let's take a look at our first video. What are you looking at, Andrew?
I'm seeing you guys.
Oh, all right. So you were looking off to the side. I was just teasing you. It's okay. Let's take a look at the first video. Here we go.
Come on, Marty. We're not the radical Antifa left. This is Coachella. Come out and dance with me. Your lunch break is over. Oh, we got the power march. What are we doing here? What?
Back up! You're arresting the dancing giraffe. Is that the right side of history?
The body is in the middle of the street.
Now, he was arrested for wearing a silly costume. Now, actually, we don't know what he's arrested for. Are those ICE agents? Can you tell by their uniform?
I can't read their badges. It's their patches.
Yeah, there's two different uniforms there. So I don't. This is out of context, so it's not really a great video. But can you imagine what might have justified that? Obstruction.
Yeah, and any normal criminal conduct. We have to keep in mind. I mean, they wear these costumes for a reason, right? Because it makes it look silly to arrest them. But logically, there's nothing about wearing this costume that prevents you from committing a criminal offense, right? They can still commit every criminal offense they could commit without the costume on. That could be impeding, obstruction, throwing bricks at the police. It could be all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, like that January 6th guy. What was he called? The guy with the weird costume? You know,
the guy with the horns.
Yeah.
Shaman?
Yeah, the shaman. Yeah, I think that's what he was known as. Yeah. All right. Well, let's do another one. This is
well, you didn't ask Greg. Has that happened to him?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yes. Have you ever arrested a guy in a giraffe uniform, or anybody who was, dressed silly?
Once in a while,
by the way, thank you for reminding me what the format of the show is.
Once in a while at Halloween, we would have the chance to pull over somebody, usually on their way back from a Halloween party that had too much to drink, which was always kind of funny, but nothing quite like that. No.
You never handcuffed anybody who was in a costume.
Well, as a police officer.
I have, but it wasn't under those circumstances. It was usually after a Halloween party DUI arrest type thing. Yeah.
Well, certain gangs, it's almost like a costume, the way they, certain tattoos and whatnot, but okay. I guess that's not quite the same thing. All right, let's take another one. This is ICE agents again. So a little bit of a theme. It's not generally what we focus on, but since we were tonight, here's ICE agents getting a little rough with somebody. I want to ask you guys if this was legal is one question, and another question is it understandable? Here we go.
This right now. I got it. Hey! What the is wrong with you?
I know who you're rooting for, but was it legal? See, there's a bus coming there. He pushed him in front of the bus. See the bus right there?
Yeah.
All right. So what do you guys think? I think we saw that from enough animals.
Lake County Sheriff's Department.
Whoa, hold on. What was that? What did I just hit? I don't know what I just pressed. So what do you guys think?
I mean, I would say he'd be privileged to arrest them for impeding. So if you're privileged to arrest someone, you can certainly use non-deadly force to stop their impeding conduct. Now, I would say, if you're pushing him, knowing you're pushing him in front of a bus, that's not non-deadly force anymore. That's deadly force. That becomes a different scenario. I expect if you ask the officer, he'd say he just didn't see the bus was coming down the street. But he's certainly privileged to push him out of the way. And if he happens to fall over, that's an assumption of risk.
What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I mean, in the day, if it got to that point, usually we would then say, and you're under arrest. If you're going to, take that kind of approach to someone, then you probably should just follow up with a custodial arrest and be done with it. But I
used to, for many years, I lived in the Los Angeles area, and this was a favorite tactic of protesters there is to block traffic on the freeways. And I always thought this was so stupid because that's no way to get anybody on your side. I mean, the people who are driving are just being annoyed by it. They lie down in front of the car, and sometimes the traffic just stops and sits there forever. And other times, people keep driving and they're on the hood of the car falling off, and there's different ways to react to it. But I think that protesters have the misconception, and this is what's dangerous and might have actually been fatal to Ms. Good in Minneapolis, is they have the mistaken notion that the First Amendment entitles them to protest anywhere and do anything. So that's what the First Amendment says. And I think that's very dangerous.
You know, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but I think it even goes deeper than that. I think they're suffering from a kind of psychopathy where they actually don't see these other people around them as fully formed human beings. It's almost like they're in a video game, and these officers and all these other people, they're real. They feel pain and have emotions and stuff, but everyone else is not quite a fully formed human being. I mean, one of the things the wife of Renee Good shouted afterwards was, "Why did you have real bullets in your gun?" As if there's a world in which the law enforcement officers would not have real bullets. But I think to them, a lot of these things they're not real in the sense that there could be real world consequences. You're supposed to hit the button, get another life in the game, and just keep going. It was not real to them that Renee Good could end up being shot in the face. Because I just don't think they're seeing the world in a real way. It's kind of a limited cognition.
But I was making it a little broader, Andrew. I mean, sometimes it doesn't even involve cops. I mean, when they block traffic on the freeway, they're not necessarily going up against cops. And then those Columbia University protesters about the Palestine issue.
But I think it's the same thing. I think when they sit in the freeway to stop the cars, they're not seeing the cars as real. They're not. You or I would never sit in a freeway and let a car barrel at us at 80 miles an hour and just hope that it would stop, right? But they just believe that it's going to stop, or it cannot hit them. They don't think they're risking their lives because they just, in a sense, they don't think it's real.
Yeah. Same thing with the, it's less dangerous, but it's like the Columbia University protesters who just took over the campus, barricading themselves. They feel like, because it's a protest for something that is important, that they're entitled to take over property.
They get away with it. Right? They routinely get away with it. I expect, by the way, that's what the January 6th protesters thought. They would be treated the same way, that if it's a bunch of people protesting out of political fervor, nobody likes it, but they won't make a big deal out of it. None of them thought they were going to be spending years in solitary waiting for a trial that would ruin them. They thought the rules would be applied to them like it was applied to the left-wing protesters, and were rudely awakened to discover, no, there's no fairness here.
Yeah, that's the precise attitude we saw from Renee Good's wife. She was taunting the officers, acting like it wasn't the least bit risky to do what they were doing.
And I wonder to what extent this is something that women are more amenable to, right? Because we dudes know, you start talking shit to another dude, there's a good chance hands are going to start flying eventually, right? So we moderate our behavior. There's always a risk of violence. We know there's a risk of violence because we've been punched in the face before for being an a-hole. I know I have. And so we learn not to do that. But women are not, right? Women can say all the foulest stuff, smack a guy around, and be pretty confident he's not going to hit her back. And I think they feel immune to the risk of physical consequences for shit talking. Not that the cops should hit him. I'm certainly not advocating that. But I wouldn't be talking to a cop like that because maybe he's having a bad day and maybe he would hit me.
They're taking advantage of their protected status.
Yeah.
And when I say take advantage, I mean taking full advantage beyond what is reasonable.
Well, Greg, when you were a cop, did you treat female suspects more gently than male suspects in the exact same circumstances?
Yeah. You gave them more latitude. And you were gentler if you had to go hands-on. Yes, of course.
Okay. What if the guy has really nice cleavage? Would you treat him nicely? All right, we got two more. The guy. Yeah, that's what we call a joke. All right, we got two more videos. Let's see, which one should we do first? Let's do this one first. This is a runaway horse in New York City. They have these horse-drawn carriages. People pay money to ride around them. And this horse just took off, left Central Park, and there we see him crashing into a cab. Yeah. Would you cite the horse?
I personally, I think that should be illegal to have horse-drawn carriages in the city of New York.
You mean cruelty to animals?
Absolutely, 100%. They don't belong there. It's a money-making grab, and I'm repulsed with the idea that they continue to do this.
You want to weigh in on that one, Andrew?
I would cite whoever's responsible for the horse. Someone has to be responsible for the horse. The horse can't be responsible for himself, right? How did the horse get away like that? There has to be a way to prevent that from happening. So whoever failed their duty in making sure they couldn't happen, I would cite him.
Well, you're assuming it was a failure. The result doesn't always indicate that there was a crime.
No. There's a legal doctrine that provides if there's a bad outcome in a high-risk environment that's predictable, that you're absolutely legally liable for it, whether you intended it or not. Same rule if you're handling firearms or handling explosives or heavy equipment. There's absolute liability for anything that goes wrong. There's ways, we know there are ways to prevent the bad things from happening. So if the bad thing happened, it's because you screwed up.
Wow, you are strict. There are ways, but I'm just envisioning this is a guy who does it every day. The horse normally behaves. He's not going to be on his guard any more than Agent Ross expected the car to come at him.
Well, I don't think anyone.
And all of a sudden, the horse takes off and can run faster than the guy. So,
yeah, but nobody's looking to put the guy in jail, Jeff. It's just a matter of probably fining him heavily,
like a spanky, maybe.
Right. What if there's a kid crossing the street? The horse is going to stop to let the kid cross the street, right? The horse is creating a danger.
All right. You talked me into it. I'd say throw the horse and his owner in the pokey.
By the way, I say that as a guy. I carry a gun every day for personal protection. I'm responsible for that gun. If something bad were to happen with that gun, that's my fault. It's no one else's fault. The gun didn't do anything. No. It would be because I did something wrong.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you would have shot the horse, but that's not where you were going at all.
No.
All right, we have one more. This is a case of attacking the wrong person. I think this was in West Hollywood, California.
To the LA County Sheriff's Department, a suspect in a black sedan jumped out and demanded this man's Rolex watch at gunpoint on the 900 block of Sweetser Avenue. The victim was walking with his girlfriend, but the armed suspect didn't anticipate what would happen next.
They didn't know that the guy was a retired wrestler, so he was able to actually get the gun off the guy and start wrestling him down.
The victim did not want to be identified, but you can hear him explain to deputies how he disarmed his attacker.
Took his wrist, put him on the ground, took the gun. I got it out of his hand. Threw it over the fence, and then I just held him down.
During the scuffle, the victim's girlfriend grabbed the suspect's handgun and threw it into the bushes.
I was told the gun was loaded. It had the guy who was sort of the hero in all this, who was able to pin the guy down, told me he saw a bullet in the chamber.
I didn't try to kill you. You tried to shoot me. I swear to God, I did.
A would-be robber who picked the wrong target and ended up tapping out.
The guy, like I said, he was a former wrestler, so he's pretty big.
Instead of cashing in.
He held him down, and he showed no mercy. I think that at one point the guy's arm got dislocated, and they just held him down.
He's lucky it wasn't torn off.
Does he have to worry about being sued or anything?
Yeah, of course he does. Yeah. Anybody can sue anybody for anything. You have the $145 filing fee. You can file a lawsuit. So sure he does. If I were him, I would have gotten rid of the gun, and then I would have gotten up and I would have walked away. I would not have waited for police to show up. What do you think is going to happen to this dude who had the gun? You think he's going to suffer a serious legal consequence for this?
Well, I don't think he had a choice. I think he was held on the ground until the police got there, I think, right?
No, I'm not talking about the homeless guy. He had no chance. I'm talking about the wrestler. If it were me, once I had disarmed that guy at the gun, I have nothing to fear from him again. I just would have let him go, got up, and walked home. I'm not waiting for the cops. Now I have to have that conversation? No, I don't want to do. Now they have my name. Now I could get sued by this homeless dude. I would just walk away. I have a friend of mine who was a combat medic, and he carries a tourniquet with him everywhere he goes. He carries a little tiny med kit. And he walked out of a restaurant one time, and there was a shooting in the parking lot. And someone got shot. A young woman got shot in the parking lot. She's bleeding out. Whips out his tourniquet, throws it on her, makes sure she's okay, gets up and walks away. He can hear the sirens coming. He just didn't want any involvement after doing what he could do to save her life. And frankly, that's a prudent thing to do.
Yeah. I remember a relative of mine was on a flight, and I think it was in the airport, actually, when they got off. Somebody had a heart attack or something. And one of the other passengers was a doctor, and basically saved the person's life. And they blinked their eyes, and the next moment the guy's gone. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I would do too. I don't know how he could have seen there was a round in the chamber. I don't think he.
I was thinking the same thing when he said it. I was like, that's great eyesight to be able to spot that.
Right. So you cycle the slide just a little bit to make sure see if there was any brass in there.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this thing: if you're going to be confrontational with someone who's a wrestler or does BJJ, do not let them lay a finger on you. If they get a hand on you, it's going to be over very, very quickly.
Stand 10 feet back.
Yep.
No, I don't think it has any legal significance, but I found it a little odd. I don't know if it struck you guys odd that, I don't know if it was the girlfriend or the wife of the guy threw the gun into the bushes. Does that make sense?
Well, that's what I would expect someone not familiar with guns to do. You know, they just want it. You know, people who are not familiar with guns, when they see a gun in real life, it's like a rattlesnake to them. You know, they don't know what makes it go off. They just know it's dangerous. They just want to get it away from them, so they throw it.
Okay, so that's logical. What would you're a guy who knows guns. What would you have done if you were?
I would have walked away. I wouldn't have been involved. I would have left my boyfriend behind. I will say this. You say you lived in L.A., it's not the smartest idea in the world to be walking around in West Hollywood with a T-shirt and a Rolex on. I mean, this is not exactly an unpredictable event.
Well, West Hollywood isn't the most dangerous neighborhood.
What's the safe part of L.A.? I have friends who live they're very wealthy. They live in nice parts of L.A. They live in Santa Monica. They live in great places, but they don't feel safe anywhere.
Right. Well, they have to look out for fires as well as getting mugged. I got stabbed in Long Beach. Almost got killed.
Long Beach. I have friends who live there too. Yeah, I like Long Beach. I was down there and I was walking by a store and suddenly there was a little gap there right by the waterfront, and a bunch of guys came running out of the gap with armfuls of clothes. They just had looted the place.
Oh yeah, they let you shoplift. That's one of the reasons I moved, is because it was just so lawless. So many homeless people living on the streets, shoplifting left and right. Nobody does anything about it.
And I would have said Long Beach was likely to be safe, right? But
well, I don't think it is. I mean, I'm not sure how dangerous it is. I'm not saying it's necessarily a reflection on Long Beach, because you can get stabbed anywhere, right?
But where I live, I don't think that way. Where I live, I don't have any, and I carry a gun every day anyway, but I have zero expectation on any given day in my community that there's a real prospect I could get stabbed.
Yeah, well, it certainly didn't make me feel more comfortable about living there. I was like it was around, I think around midnight, and I was just walking home, not a care in the world, never even thought about it. And some kid on a bike, I think he was 15 years old, he passed me as I was walking on his bike, and then I saw to the corner of my eye that he turned around. He got off his bike, and he pulled out a knife, and he said, "Give me your wallet." And I fought him off, and I'm not much of a fighter, and also I didn't have a knife, and he stabbed me multiple times. But the point is, it was the last thing I ever thought of. But after that happened, I had a little bit more situational awareness, and to this day, I don't have PTSD, but I just am more sensible about making sure.
Yeah, and that's why I carry a gun. I've carried a gun every day of my adult life, every day. Even when I lived in Massachusetts for 25 years, believe it or not, I had a concealed carry permit in Massachusetts. And I've never come close to having to need it, never had come close. Well, I shouldn't say having to need it. I've never come close to pulling it out. There's been plenty of times when I was glad I had it and I left the area and nothing ever came of anything. But that kind of scenario, a gun is almost never the solution to whatever problem you're dealing with. But in that kind of scenario, when a gun is the solution, it's generally the only solution that's going to work.
Yeah. I think there's a lawsuit in California now because it's so difficult to get a permit to carry, right? And it should be the other way around. The default position should be you can get it unless there's some unusual circumstance, but it's the other way around.
Most of the country, most of the states are constitutional carry now. You don't need a permit to carry a gun concealed. If you're a law-abiding person,
Yeah. And what happened to me is a perfect example. Why should I lose my life to that kid? You know what else that was unusual about that is right after he attacked me, he pulled the same thing with two other people in the same neighborhood. So imagine, like, obviously after you stab somebody, the cops are going to be coming, the helicopters, there's going to be a whole big scene. The kid got my wallet. He doesn't consider himself lucky and just takes off. He stays in the neighborhood, and he does it two more times. And then they
there's
caught
no
him.
real consequence. right?
Yeah, well.
You know, people don't understand. These criminals don't think like you and I. You and I think, well, what would it take for me to shoot somebody, or what would it take for me to stab somebody? It would have to be something really horrific. And like the guy walking around with the Rolex, I made the joke, right? Hey, you're walking around with a Rolex, they can see it, you're going to get mugged. But when you got attacked, there was no Rolex, right? There was no visible signs of wealth. This kid had no idea if he could get anything of value off you, and he was willing to kill you anyway. Most murders, people are killing each other over nothing. Nothing. It's civilized people don't think this way, but people are routinely murdered for no good reason whatever.
Well, he was convicted of attempted murder, but since he's 15, I don't know how long he stayed in or what sort of a facility exactly it was, but at least that's a serious charge. I was happy.
Well, he probably gets a free college education now.
And the judge yelled at me to take my hat off. I'm the victim. I was in the courtroom and he yelled at me for wearing a hat. What do you guys have?
Just remember, judges are lawyers who make less money than successful lawyers.
Yeah, right. What do you think? Do they have any authority to tell people how to dress in their courtroom?
In the courtroom?
Yeah.
They can do whatever they want in their courtroom.
I mean, that's the way they behave, or they really have that authority?
No, they'll just hold you in contempt. Just be glad he didn't tell you to come back in a dress.
like they wear a dress. They're practically transvestites in those.
No, in the courtroom, that's the judge's fiefdom. There's almost no check on his authority there in terms of being able to hold you in contempt.
The other thing is,
is very polite.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. I wanted him to rule in my favor and not be lenient with that guy because he was pissed off at me. So I took it off. But I just got summoned for jury duty, and on the summons, it's telling me how to dress, and that's just annoying to me.
Listen, you've flown commercial, right? You've seen how people board commercial air flights, how some of them dress these days. People show up to court like that. The judges aren't having it.
Right, and that's what they're telling me in this summons. No hats, and a few other rules too.
No bare midriff, Jeff.
Yeah, right. Wait a minute, I'm working for free for you people. And on top of that, you're going to tell me how to dress? All right. Well, Andrew, let's make sure people know how to get your book. Where is it? I got so much stuff down there. Well, you showed on your end, and we can show it on our end too.
There we go.
And you can get that on Andrew's website, free of charge, only for the shipping fee. That's a very good deal. Shipping can't be all that much, right? Depending on where you live, $3, $5, something.
I think it's a little more than that. I think it's 7 or 8 because we have to pay the warehouse people too. So it's not just the postage.
Okay, well, it's still less than.
It might be $7 or $8, but it's a fraction of the cost of the book, and Amazon charges the shipping too.
Yeah, unless you're
unless you're Prime, I guess.
Yeah. I'd like to think of myself.
But honestly, if they ever are contemplating, they might have to defend themselves. If you don't know these legal boundaries, and the good news is they're not complicated. They're very simple. There's only a maximum of 5 elements of a claim of self-defense. That's it. Just 5 things you need to know. We cover it all in the book in plain English. If you don't know these things and you defend yourself with force, there's a good possibility you're defending yourself right into prison because self-defense as a legal defense is very binary. It's like an old school light switch. Either you qualify, you did it right, or you broke one of the required elements and you don't have a legal defense of self-defense. You just committed a crime. There's no reason to be in that jeopardy. Just learn what the 5 things are. The book is free. Make yourself hard to convict.
I should have read it before I got stabbed. Maybe it would have changed the outcome. I might have taken some certain steps to protect myself. And Andrews has a great podcast called The Branca Show on YouTube. There it is. I was watching you the other day, and I, as a guy who does this, I was very impressed that you could keep it going all by yourself. Like when I'm with Greg and the other 2 podcasts I do, I have co-hosts. It's a lot easier to keep the conversation going, but you do it all by yourself.
It would be.
Do you also produce it by yourself, or do you have somebody helping you?
I should say we have people we pay to do the clips and shorts and stuff, the content afterwards, the replay stuff. But the actual show itself is what you're looking at right here. It's just me. And I mess up plenty of times, man. I'll tell you, there's buttons I should be pressing that I forget to press. And I'm a boomer. I can't help it. But most of the time it goes off okay. And as you mentioned, we're on X too. So The Branca Show, X, YouTube. I think we may even be on Facebook, but I don't really use Facebook personally. And whatever other platforms are out there.
Yeah, I've been flashing your X page throughout the show. There it is again, at the Branca Show. That's easy to remember. And it's not a boring page, folks. Not a boring page at all. All right. Well, thanks. You were a great guest, and thanks for us. I think this is the first time we had our guest stick around for Has It Happened to Greg? So we appreciate you. We appreciate you playing along and taking all this time with us. And I hope you nice people watching will join us tomorrow night for Ask the Inspector with Scott Ritter. And then on Thursday night, we'll deal with this topic again with Shipwrecked Crew. And that, I think we can say his real name, right? He's sort of semi-pseudonymous, right? Bill Shipley. He's a former federal prosecutor.
Yeah, I believe he said it on X. I don't think he's trying to keep it secret.
Yeah, he's just kind of.
Sorry,
well,
Bill.
we just let the secret out. All right. Well, thanks again, and thanks to our beloved audience. Join us again next week at the same time, 7 p.m. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Brian, Andrew, and good night, everybody.
Okay. Thank you.